Well, the expansive festive season of Championship Manager specials is finally coming towards a close because today, West Bromwich Albion, the final remaining club at the moment, have appointed their, well, new man as such, but is actually a returning face from many a year ago. That's because Tony Mowbray is their new head coach, replacing Carlos Corberan, who left just before Christmas to go to Valencia, his native club. We are going to talk, of course, as always, about the old man, the new man, and what we think for the future for West Bromwich Albion. So hopefully you're looking forward to all of that. Give us your thoughts in the comments below. But as always, at the start of these manager specials, which you can find plenty of recent ones from up in the eye above, let's have a talk about Carlos Corberan and the job he did at West Brom, because there's no doubt in initially difficult circumstances, Corberan did a magnificent job at the club, was there for just over 2 years, amassed a win percentage of almost 44%, guided the club to the playoff semi-finals last season, and of course this year had them right in the playoff mix before moving on as well. He's a manager who, as we saw at Huddersfield and as we've now seen at West Brom, is able to structure and discipline a side incredibly well. And it's almost amusing in a way, because you see that he's worked as Marcelo Bielsa's right-hand man for some time. And to come out of it, and instead of playing this complete gun-ho end-to-end football, he's one of the most disciplined coaches you could imagine, which is possibly where the balance came in Bielsa's sides. And we saw that evidence first with Huddersfield, where he competed remarkably to get them to the playoffs, but then at West Brom, where he took a side and made them so disciplined. And you almost went into home games last season and this knowing they wouldn't concede, and it became the long-running joke in 23-24, just predict 2-0 to West Brom at home, and it normally would come off. An incredible record overall. Of course, didn't quite have that quality of the top sides, and until the takeover last season, were looking a little bit more perilous financially, so was having to balance things and look for a more maybe delicate approach without the flair attacking players you would normally have. But given the situation he inherited, and given the maybe lack of balance in certain areas of the squad, maybe a little bit light on strikers, very hefty on midfielders, he managed to adapt players into different roles and get the very best out of what he had available to get to the playoffs and then be on course to do so again. There's just never a doubt with West Brom. And I think the biggest testament you can give to him is that at the start of this season, we put him in the top 6, West Bromwich Albion, in our pre-season predictions purely because of him. And we were getting pelters from some West Brom fans in a comment saying, we haven't got a good enough squad. But Carlos Corberan, still without the firepower, managed to make it happen. We will return to that conversation about firepower when we get to Tony Mowbray in a minute, because he is the new man in charge. And first of all, great to see him back, hopefully to a health situation where he's able to take charge of an EFL Championship club. We know he had to step away from Birmingham when he'd started really well there. And in the end, it did probably contribute partly to their relegation, because he had a 50% win rate after 8 games. And of course, it weren't quite the same after he moved on, probably until Gary Rowett came in a little too late. But under his stewardship at Birmingham and pretty much every other Championship club, he's always done a really good job. If you look at his career stats, his win rate is actually pretty remarkable at this level. 40% at West Brom in his first stint at the club, having moved down from Hibernian. It was them who took the chance on him previously. But before we go and look at him in a bit more detail, let's have a look at the West Bromwich Albion statement, which of course says they are delighted to welcome him and return to the club. But that wasn't the main reason they picked him. It was based on his experience and the performance in his role at several other EFL clubs, because he's done a remarkable job at several teams. He does join with Mark Venus, who of course is his trusted right-hand man, and probably the most exciting news is that it's a 2.5-year deal, which hopefully from a health point of view and all the stuff off the pitch means that he's back to full 100% and ready to go as head coach. He won't take charge of the game against Stoke tomorrow, but he will be in the dugout against Middlesbrough on Tuesday. And then we'll talk about the timing with the few games after that, because it could be a very interesting start for him. Now, of course, we've got to go back to his first stint at West Brom, which does shape a huge part of his history, having come down from Scottish football, where he'd had a really exciting Hibs side that was stripped away largely by the 2 Old Firm clubs in 2006. He came down to West Brom, got to the playoff final in the Championship the first year, losing narrowly to the Derby side that then went on to make unfortunate history in the Premier League. In 07-08, though, he put that right, winning the Championship title before next season having a decent go in the Premier League. And you've got to remember, in that era, the Jeremy Peace era at West Brom, they weren't spending money. They were competing on a very strict budget. and he did an incredible job to get them where he did. Obviously, Celtic came calling, probably one of the few stints of his career that didn't work out as well as it could have. But after that, 40% win rate at Middlesbrough, where of course he'll manage his first game. Then at Coventry had a more average spell, but after that, a brilliant stint at Blackburn, 40% win rate, took them back up from League One to the Championship, had them competing on the outskirts of the playoffs, despite selling their best players every year. And we've obviously seen that until this season, Blackburn haven't been able to do the same since. Did a wonderful job at Sunderland again, taking over just as the transfer window was shutting in the 22-23 season, got them to the playoffs and was unfortunate again that all his centre-halves were injured for the Luton playoff game, which ended up being the only difference between the sides, but built an exciting attacking side. And it's one of the biggest strengths of Tony Mowbray in an era where a lot of older managers are banded as sort of dinosaurs or whatever. Tony Mowbray has adapted to the times. He's always played entertaining football. He's always had quick counter-attacking sides. And he's always had teams that are capable of controlling the football when the situation arises. But one of the things that he's able to do best is develop young talent. And with the way West Brom are moving forward, and we saw at the end of the statement talking about him being a head coach and that the transfer strategy in the background was continuing, I think the most impressive thing about his stints at Sunderland and Blackburn were proving that he could inherit young sides. He can inherit players in the Sunderland case that maybe weren't the profile or the type of players he would go out and sign, or even coming in at the end of a window where the other managers largely done it. And to come in and just work with and improve players. The amount of players that Blackburn sold on for massive profit, the amount of players that improved beyond all measure at Sunderland, and the amount of players he improved in his first stint going back to West Brom. The team that he developed at Hibernian with some of the players that went on to become Old Firm superstars for a decade. He deserves so much credit for his work as a coach alongside Mark Venus. And I think that's where these two have such a strength, is that those modern clubs that are looking for a head coach who can work with a transfer team and can build this profile of a young squad that can be exciting and be improved. He is a coach who probably more than almost anyone can prove he can do it. And probably it puts him past a lot of the younger managers and head coaches that are in the market, where some of the other more experienced managers perhaps don't have that success rate. So I think Tony Mowbray is a very safe choice as a head coach for West Brom. Of course, they know what he can do personally. The fans know what he's capable of. And anyone who's watched the Championship in the last few years will know that his sides have been among the most exciting to watch. He's got an excellent record at almost all of the clubs. And he's had several promotions on his CV, which obviously in the next couple of years is probably where West Brom will be looking to build again. There are deficits in this West Brom squad though, and we know where the work has got to be done. They've got the fourth best defence in the Championship. They've been incredibly disciplined and solid under Carlos Corberan. We've mentioned that. But goals have always been the problem. They weren't the most fluent attacking team last season. And this year it's been a struggle. They're the lowest scorers in the top 11 teams in the Championship. They've only just managed over a goal a game and have been frustrated in front of goal to draw blanks a number of times. Josh Maja has been pretty much a one-man show when it comes to the goal contributions at times. And that creativity hasn't always been there. We've seen the odd special goal from Carlin Grant, a few long-range strikes, but we've not always seen the biggest threat from open play. And West Brom, one of the things we always said, they're efficient with their chances under Carlos Corberan, but they never really created bundles. You see the teams like maybe a Leeds at the moment who create 20, 25 shots most games and sometimes do or don't take their chances. West Brom are often reliant on maybe 10 shots a game and 4 or 5 on target. And if you do have a striker who's going to miss 1 or 2 on a day, that might be it. There's not going to be another chance for someone else. So I think if there is a weakness in the West Brom team, that's it. And I think that sort of signifies why they've only had 9 wins and 13 draws, which is a Championship high this season. And even if you turned, let's put an example, if you turn 5 of those into victories and drawn as many as Middlesbrough, they'd be up on 50 points and right in the title race. So that is the only little improvement for West Brom. And the question is, can Tony Mowbray flip that? Maybe can the club add attacking talent or someone that suits his style while still maintaining that defensive discipline, which, to be fair, his Sunderland side did at times in the 22-23 season, but previously at Blackburn, it had been at a cost of defensive frailty. So that's going to be the big question mark at West Brom. Can he keep the defensive brilliance that has been achieved under Carlos Corberan, that ultra discipline, while still finding that extra bit of counter-attacking prowess that his sides have become so well accustomed to in recent seasons? We talk about the timing as well. Tony Mowbray has come in at potentially a decent time. I know that first game is a very difficult one at a former club of his, but after that, home to Portsmouth, away to Plymouth, currently both in relegation trouble. Then home games against Sheffield Wednesday and Blackburn, away to Millwall, who haven't had the best start under Alex Neil, then at home to Oxford United. It could be a very good February for him. If they can get a couple of decent players in and start fairly quickly, you could easily see them picking up at least sort of 3 or 4 wins in that time, which will keep them right in the mix for the top 6. Then as they start to hit a bit of form towards the end of the season, you look at those big games coming up in March, away from home at Leeds and Burnley. We're going to start to see the tests, aren't we? But then they've got home games that are suitable as well against the likes of Sunderland, not far from the end. So this is going to be a really interesting end to the season for Tony Mowbray and for West Brom. Of course, myself and Craig had them sneaking in the top 6 this season, even when their squad didn't look great in pre-season, just because of the Carlos Corberan factor. And even though I'm a massive fan of Tony Mowbray, I do feel their chance of making the playoff is slightly reduced just because they're going to lose that ultra discipline. And while I have faith that Mowbray, with the right players, with the amount of time that he would normally need, he's always been a stable manager and spent time at a club. In that situation, he would be able to get a more attacking tune out of the team. Will it come quick enough for the Championship playoffs? Well, you look at his Sunderland team and you say maybe it will. They can pick up more points on the road. Not many teams are doing that in the Championship this year. That could be enough to push them in the top 6. We all know how stupid his sacking was at Sunderland, but before that, over 5 years at Blackburn, including a promotion. He spent, 3 years at Middlesbrough. He spent 3 seasons at West Brom. He is a manager that sticks around at teams. And normally at this stage, we ask, does a manager see out his contract? And Tony Mowbray might have a chance. West Brom might be a club that panics and pulls the trigger if they're not up in top 6 contention. But I think they will be with this manager. Whether or not they make it this year, I think it's going to be very close. I think after that top 3 and then Sunderland have probably given themselves enough of a buffer now, I do think it's anyone's game, probably down to about 11th place at the minute. And you just have to ask, have Middlesbrough got that extra bit of firepower? Again, very different side, probably closer to what we would expect from Tony Mowbray's team moving forward, where they're a little bit more fragile defensively, but can go and score 3, 4 or 5 in a game. Watford's so magnificent at home, so awful on the road. Again, if it clicks on the road, they could sneak above. I think it's going to be so close, probably from 5th down to 11th, that it's so hard to tell whether they'll be in. If I had to stick my neck on the line, I still think that Middlesbrough and West Brom, of those sides, are the favourites to sneak in. I think Blackburn have a slightly smaller squad on paper. If they get a few injuries, I think they're harmed more than some of the others. And I just don't trust some of the others away from home or to be consistent enough. And Norwich, as we've seen, have lost a lot of firepower recently too. So I think West Brom are still just about on course for the top 6. I still think they get there under Mowbray, maybe sneaking 6th, just behind Middlesbrough. Whether they go up in that playoffs is hard to tell because the top 3, even 4 with Sunderland's form this year, really remarkable teams, and it's going to be an incredible ask for anyone to beat those guys. However, I think Tony Mowbray's the right appointment, but it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? West Brom fans, are you happy to see Mowbray back? Championship fans, great to have him back to health. Are you worried if you're a playoff rival now that they've got a prolific manager who's proven he can do it before? A very good one returning to the Championship. Great for the league, great for neutrals who want to watch entertaining football. But is it going to come at a cost for West Brom defensively? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this little look at Tony Mowbray and the change of manager at West Brom, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. There's been loads in recent weeks. You can find all of them in the playlists up in the eye above, as well as our predictions for this weekend's Championship action. Come and get involved there. Give us your score predictions and you get a shout out if you beat or match my overall score. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything. We'll be back on Sunday night as we look ahead to a full midweek fixture list in the EFL Championship again. But for now, Tony Mowbray is the new head coach at West Brom. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again on Sunday as we return to Championship predictions.